Okay, hello everybody. Let's get started. We have actually lot to tell you, probably. So yeah, thank you for joining us. So today, Máté and I are well trying to convince you that everybody should use VS Code. Well, anyways, that's your decision, but we have been very happy with that. So we will just show some basics of that, how much we can show in 1 hour, and yeah. So Visual Studio Code for researchers. So at least my day-to-day life or day-to-day working routine with data analysis, my analysis environment looks like that. I'm using a lot of scripting tools like terminal for command line commands, bash scripts, shell scripts, Python, Jupyter notebooks, R for statistical analysis, and still occasionally Matlab, but we are all trying to move away from Matlab to more Python-based environments. And so, but yeah, so basically, if you are like me, and I think most of us working in research, cognitive neuroscience research at least, we use a lot of scripting tools in our day-to-day work. And we expect some essential features for our analysis and coding, that there are debugging features, version control, coding assistance, like IntelliSense, style, syntax highlighting, and snippets and things like that, and that we can explore variables and display our plots. So these are features that we expect. And so we are all about robust and open science. So when we publish our work and when we have written something up, we should share our code. So we should use GitHub or GitLab, or when we collaborate with other colleagues, if we code things together. So we need these sharing and collaboration tools. And for writing documentation, I say we because that's what I at least use. So researchers often use Markdown for writing documentation. Some even write their papers in LaTeX and stuff. So these are so we are using quite a rich analysis environment. And for all that, well, we could use different things. We could just use terminal for terminal commands. We could use, I don't know, some code editing software for bash scripts, and maybe Spider or something for Python, and RStudio for R. And so we could use different things, separate things, but wouldn't it be nice to have like everything integrated more as much as possible, at least in one integrated development environment, where there is a code editor with features like coding assistance, debugging tools, and an integrated terminal, which makes it easy to write, test, and debug code within a single interface, and preferably if this integrated environment supports multiple languages. So, and such integrated development environments exist, and also ones that support multiple languages. So there are many of them, and in Stack Overflow developer survey for 2023, and one of the questions was, which development environments did you use regularly over the past year, and which do you want to work with over the next year? So 86,000 respondents responded to this question, and the overwhelming winner was VS Code, overwhelming over other IDEs. And VS Code, since its birth in 2015, it became very rapidly became a popular IDE. And in the last 6 years, it has been very stable winner, overwhelming winner for the developers. Well, in 2020, actually, Stack Overflow didn't include the IDE question in the survey for some reason, but I just interpolate that. I guess that in that year, probably the Visual Studio Code was also the top winner. So I would say in the last 6 years, the Visual Studio Code has been overwhelming and most popular IDE. So perhaps we should use it as researchers as well, if it's such a good thing. And I have been using it for, I don't know, like a year or two or something. I have been very happy, and I think Máté has been very happy too, and has definitely made my work easier and even more it's more pleasure to work really, and things works nicely and integrated. So Visual Studio Code. So what is it? It's a free software. It's open source. It's by Microsoft, but nevertheless, it's by Microsoft. It's free and open source. It was launched in 2015, and it has a cross-platform support, so it's available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. It is lightweight and fast. I can attest that compared to some other softwares. It really loads fast and lightweight, and it has multi-language support. Supports almost every major programming language, basically hundreds of languages. It's customizable, allows users to tailor their environment to their needs, from themes and keyboard shortcuts to more complex workflow configurations. And it's extendable. An extensive library of extensions allow one to tailor the IDE to your specific use cases. So if everything was included, like out of the box, if you didn't extend it yourself, then VS Code would be just like a bloated piece of software. It wouldn't be lightweight and fast anymore. So instead it takes modular approach, where you add things that you actually need for your work. And it has a built-in version control integration. It supports collaboration. For example, through Git, it also have a live share features where you can do coding together with your supervisor or peers, collaborators. And it has because it has been for the past 6 years, the most popular IDE among developers. It has a lot of support, a lot of community support. Well, basically, let's say almost everybody uses it. Well, 73% at least. So it has a lot of community support, forums, tutorials, documentation, and basically I have found that if I want some feature, if I like working and think, oh, that would be great, why isn't that there? I just search for it, and actually it is there. So everything can be tailored to my very specific demands, and I can always find solutions and support. And yeah. So VS Code's combination of performance, flexibility, and community support makes it an invaluable tool for researchers across disciplines. And whether for coding experiments, analyzing data, or writing your findings, it offers a versatile platform and can adapt to various needs, enhancing productivity and collaboration. So by the way, I'm not paid by VS Code or Microsoft. It's purely I'm just enthusiastic because I really find it very useful for myself. It definitely helps in my work. So I will just before we go into more details and live demos, I will just show some things that I'm doing with VS Code. These are not any promotional screenshots. These are actually screenshots from my own work. So I use VS Code for coding in Python. So I can see my script. There is coding assistance like with IntelliSense. I can see, well, there are many coding support, and I can see my variables. I can see my plot and stuff, and I can do the same thing in R. It basically the interface looks very similar to RStudio. Let's say also I can see my variables, my code, and there is a lot of coding support with syntax highlighting and IntelliSense and stuff, and I can see my plots. And for Bash and using terminal, so I also use quite a bit of Bash scripting, particularly if I want to submit some scripts to do multiple how was it? SBatch basically. So I can write and edit my Bash script, and in the same window, not going anywhere else, there is a terminal where can I submit my script, and I can also inspect my my jobs, how they are progressing. And also for Bash scripting, that's another thing, because Bash scripting is so horrible and so non-user friendly at all. In VS Code, there are also several extensions for Bash scripts that also gives you style highlighting. Like here, I could see what's the problems there, or what's a suggestion how to improve my code. So that's definitely much better than writing it in some more basic code editor. And can also use Jupyter notebooks. So inside VS Code, and documenting in Markdown. And so Máté will show a little bit more about Markdown stuff. or I can also, if I wanted and was such a geek as if I wrote my papers in LaTeX like some people do, I just tried to write an abstract in LaTeX, which works in VS Code as well. So it automatically shows the output. And so it's also, so basically you can do everything. You can even integrate it with Zotero reference manager and could write your papers in VS Code. It has a Git integration and assistance. So if there's time for Git, there could be a separate workshop on how to use Git with VS Code. But just basically, there are a lot of nice things about Git integration and assistance. This is just a screenshot of a window showing one project where Máté and I work together on bits conversion. And here you can see all our changes that we have made and can see who made the changes and stuff. And I have here one uncommitted change, which I can use a terminal to, if you are familiar with Git, you can write your commands in a command terminal. But if you are not that familiar or prefer more user-friendly or user interface, and you can also write your commit here and press a button to commit. And so basically, it can be tailored to everybody needs. Who likes writing in terminal can write in terminal. Who likes more clicking buttons can click buttons. So I hope that has at least continued to keep you interested, that VS Code might be for you as well. So how to install it and get started with it. So there's something in the chat. Question to that. So do you think VS Code offers more advantages for writing LaTeX compared to other tools? Well, actually, I haven't used LaTeX much. I used LaTeX to write one of my preprints, and then I used Overleaf. I was quite happy with Overleaf. And I only tried LaTeX recently just as a test to see how it works on VS Code for one small abstract. So I don't actually have much experience with LaTeX at all. And I only have used Overleaf for one project and a small example. And so I don't know about that. So I can't comment, but just that I have seen that, yeah, you can. It seems there are several extensions for LaTeX on VS Code. So I'm not sure whether it has more advantages to some other things or not, or comparable. So yeah, so installing VS Code. So advice for CBU users. There might be some of the attendees who are not CBU users, but that advice might be similar. We advise you to install VS Code on your computer. There's a green light from IT. You don't need to ask IT's permission. Install it on your computer. Most of us work with Windows computers, and don't install it through Software Portal, because then you will, every time you want to update or do something, you will need to ask IT. So use it, just go to VS Code, Visual Studio Code website, download it and install it. We also have a VS Code module on login nodes, like through X2Go, but we don't really recommend using it except in special cases, and we will mention what the special case might be. But we strongly advise you to install it on your computer and then connect it to login nodes. Máté will show about that.
I just wanted to add that when you go to the VS Code webpage, there's a user installer like that shows there, and there's also the kind of like, I don't know, organization installer. So use the user installer. That's what you can install on your PC. The other one, only the IT guys can.
Let's see what we see there. Yes.
Now, not running on login mode. So then you show later if you want to like send John the password.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yep.
Yeah, we will need to show that.
So it's running on your desktop.
Máté will demonstrate it.
So that's the amazing thing about VS Code, that basically it runs on your PC, but you can remotely SSH from VS Code onto the login node, and that's just the game changer.
So our online attendees can't hear what we talk here, but basically one thing what Máté said, when you go to VS Code website, so what's happening then? I don't know. I think usually just default, you click on download for Windows. Yeah, Máté? So this is VS Code. So.
I think if you go to the drop-down menu over there, no, it's like next to download for Windows. Sorry, not there. In the
What?
download for Windows, there's a arrow. Yeah, okay, there you go. And then there's user installer
Okay.
and system installer. So use the
So
user installer. Yeah,
installer.
that's the one you can install.
Yeah. And then there was a question which we will come back later anyway. Okay. Yeah, and then once you have installed it and opened it, it will come up with a welcome screen. So you can start to customize VS Code for your needs. First, if you want, you can change the theme. There are many themes available, dark, light. You can install even more if you want. And I recommend that before you get started, you actually go through this welcome screen, because there are some tips, and like if you click on these things like tune settings, and it would be good to familiarize yourself to just go through this welcome screen and check things, explore. So now we will actually go to some live demos. So let's say I will now open VS Code that I have installed. But I need to go to my remote. So I will open VS Code. For me, the welcome screen will look different because I have already used VS Code some time, but it still gives me some walkthroughs. It's always good to have a look what they suggest. Like there are a lot of tutorials and stuff, and if you are already an expert or have used VS Code for long, you can switch and not to show welcome screen each time. But it's useful because here it shows me the recent things that I have had open on VS Code stuff. So this is like the first basic screen, how it looks VS Code. I can close it. If I close and nothing is open, it still shows these nice suggestions, like the main shortcuts to commands and how to open files. So they're also useful. So as in any software, there's a menu. There are menu things. One thing about VS Code is that you can go to commands in multiple ways. You can use menu bars and other things. One of the most useful thing is a command palette, which you can access with either with F1. Oh, well, I'm here talking about Windows shortcuts. On Linux or Mac, well, the would be similar, but I think F1 would work on all. So command palette you can access either with F1 or with this Control-Shift-P. Control-Shift-P. And I don't know how do we get rid of that bar.
If there's
Oh, thanks. So Control-Shift-P or F1, and there are basically all commands that you might want. Just so start typing, or let's say open file. So you can access it through that command palette. There are all, or you can go through menu bars. And so this on the left side, this is so-called activity bar. So activity bar are the main functionality of VS Code. So this is a file explorer, this is a search bar, this is a source control, debugger, extension bar. So this activity bar here on the left, and then when you click, so this is a sidebar. And I have, well, when you start, you will not have that many things here. I have just already installed several extensions, so that's why I have a lot of these activities for me already there. But yeah, so activity bar, very useful. And so a status bar is very useful as well. So let's say I will actually open some file. So you can see some. So here I have opened one of my projects. This is the editor, and in this case it's a Python. So that's an editor window and status bar. So in status bars, there are a lot of useful things. It shows me like if there are some errors, or I can also access my Git graph, or can also do some so yeah, it shows important information about the open projects and files, like warnings, errors, and also allows quick adjustment to editor's layout. Like here I can adjust how many spaces is my tab, like here it is 4, or some other things. It shows in which line column I am, in which Python interpreter I am, and things like that. So status bar is very useful, not only for information, but you can also click on things, and like here. And panels. So panels, another thing. So I can go with, let's say, as a beginner, I will do the most familiar way with a menu. So we'll go a view, and yeah, let's say terminal. So these are all panels. Yeah. So I'll open terminal. There are also keyboard shortcuts for everything. There are keyboard shortcuts that you can also set yourself. For actually this for terminal, it is on Windows at least Control and tilde. So Control tilde open close. So this is these are the panels. Yeah, so there's terminal, problems, and some other things. So, and you can also arrange all this, like you can put this somewhere else, like panel position, left, right, bottom, and align things. So that's, and like you can also adjust settings, a lot of settings. So settings you can also access in multiple ways. You can go through menu bar, preferences, settings, or you can go through command palette with F1, let's say, or Control-Shift-P, and type settings, and then you will see that there are settings for your workspace, or settings for you can open settings as a JSON file or that. So when here sometimes loads a little bit, yeah. And basically you can search here, let's say, one setting that I might want to enable, disable immediately. So one thing in VS Code by default, so I will show the enable preview. No, yeah, so this was the setting. Enable, so editor enable preview. So, and that will be by default, it will be enabled. So what will happen will be basically if you click on a file, it will show this italicized mode, and you can't really, and if I open another one, so it closes the previous one. So it can be quite irritating. First, I was confused what's happening, why I want my tabs to keep opening. But the thing is that this is just by default, if you single click, it just shows a preview. If I start editing something there, it from italicized, it changes back to, and then it would stay there. So now it stays there. But so yeah, but I find it irritating, and I see that many people find it irritating. So that's one of the first settings that I actually changed. It might be useful if you know what's happening, but if it comes as a surprise. So basically, if you go to settings and search for enable preview and disable this enable preview, then now when I single click, it opens immediately in editing mode, and it doesn't close. Yeah. Well, before you would need to double click to open in editing mode. So anyways, there are a lot of settings that you can customize for your own wishes and needs and desires. And yeah, so this is just the basics. Basically, a lot of customization through settings, F1 command palette or Control-Shift-P, and activity bar, status bar, and now Máté will show you more actions.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dace. Actually, thanks for that setting. I was irritating for me as well, and I learned to live with it. So now I know how to turn it off. I'm just gonna switch windows. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you through a typical project setting up and show how Python extension works, how to edit Python code, how to debug Python code, and how Jupyter notebooks look like, some of the features, just a little bit of Markdown, that sort of stuff. So basically, when you open your VS Code, this is what you're gonna see in Windows 10 at least. You might actually remember that Dace has looked slightly different. She was working on Windows 11. This is a Windows 10, very similar. You get the same basic things. So when you open it up, this is my Windows PC at the CBU. So this is running on my Windows PC. So to work efficiently, you can directly through SSH, you can directly log on to one of the login nodes in the CBU cluster. If you're not at the CBU, you can do that still. You just need to connect to the VPN, and then you can connect to the CBU cluster. And alternatively, you can connect to any remote server. For example, you have the high performance cluster at the wider university, the CSD3. You can also connect to that as well. So the same principle applies. So for that to be able to do, you need to first install the remote SSH extension, which, as you can see, is already installed on my PC because I've used this before. So the first thing you install is the remote SSH. You just click on it. You can search for extensions up there. Once it comes up, you can just click install, and it will be installed, and all the requirements will be installed along with it. So once you have remote SSH, then you will have this little green button over there at the bottom. Alternatively, you can just say remote SSH, connect to host. As you can see, I've got a number of login nodes already set up as hosts. But if you do this for the first time, then you just click add new SSH host. And here you type your CBU login credentials. So it's like MA09 for me, and then the login node name you want to use, like login K01. I'm not going to go through with this because I already got it set up, but you just hit enter, and then you got it set up. So if I click here, I can now just connect to a host which I already set up. So I'm connecting to K01, and then this now, as you can see, says in a separate window, opens a remote, and then it prompts for a password. This is the CBU password you use, so type it in. And I messed it up, I think. So yeah, there you go. Okay, so number of things, but main important thing that you can see that this is now SSH to login K01. So basically, this instance of the software runs on your local PC, but it is connected to the remote, which means that all the code which you are running will run on the remote directly. Okay, so what you can do now is either set up a project folder if you're starting fresh, or you can just connect to one of those. I'm going to show you how to set up a project folder. So I've got a folder somewhere. So I go to open folder, and I look up my project folders. I got this. I say okay. Now this is going to connect again, so you're going to have to type your password again, but this is only the number of times you have to do this. Okay, there you go. So you can immediately see that we have an error message here. Remote host may not meet VS Code server prerequisites. This is a particular issue we have currently with VS Code. This is a worldwide issue. VS Code just recently updated their requirements for servers, and the current configuration of the cluster is not compliant, along with a huge number of Amazon AWS servers. So it's a huge issue. You have the banner up there, which you can't turn off. This is not gonna get in your ways because they agreed to support these old server versions for another year, and by that time the cluster will be upgraded at the CBU, so there's not going to be a problem. Just be aware of this. It's a worldwide thing. That's why you get it. You can ignore it safely. Unfortunately, because of the developers, we can't turn this banner off. So you're gonna have to live with that banner. Okay, so we got here. If you have two-factor authentication logging in onto a server, then you can still do that from that terminal. It just pops up another question. You need to set it up such that it asks for a terminal. Otherwise, it just asks for the password up here somewhere. I'm not going to go into that. If you have questions, I can.
So that would basically, if you want to connect to, for example, universities login system, you don't need it at the CBU. We don't have two-factor authentication, but Máté has set it up because you sometimes connect to universities resources.
Yeah. So this is a setting like show login terminal. I think that's the. I can't find it. So anyway, so there's a setting which enables you to do it from the terminal. Okay, so we're in. As you can see, this is my workspace. How did you make it bigger?
So it's Control plus, Control minus. You
Okay.
can change that.
Okay, so this is my demo file. So I just opened up a Python file which I wrote. So as you can see, it's nicely highlighted. The reason it is nicely highlighted, code syntax highlighting and everything, is because I have installed the Python extension, which is all here. So you can have this installed. Actually, if you open up a Python file without having that, VS Code will tell you like, oh, there might be an interesting plugin for you to use, and then you can just install it. Once you have the Python, and I also recommend you to install the Jupyter, but I actually think that maybe they install the two together anyway. So once you install one, the other will be installed as well. So these are the basic things you need to edit and run Python code. So this is one of my files I wrote for converting neuroimaging MEG data to base format. So I'm just going to use this as an example script how to navigate. The first thing you need to do is to set the Python interpreter, which you're going to use. And this brings us to the Python virtual environments, which is a separate topic. There are many ways. We use Conda environments. So you can basically select the Conda environment for your Python interpreter. So once again, you go into the command palette, and the first thing, because I used it recently, is Python select interpreter. And then here it lists a lot of my Conda environments. I happen to use this one. And then you're all set. You have, whenever you call Python, then it will point to that Python installed in that Conda environment. And you can actually, I would recommend you to set up a separate Conda environment for each of your projects, so you can customly tailor your needs for each project. And then once you share your code, you can just export that environment and you can share it with your code so that people can replicate your results.
Yeah, and there in the status bar on the right side, you can see in which interpreter you are. Just always check whether you are in the one you want to be.
And you only need to do this once. And then once you set this up, then VS Code will remember.
Sorry, just so can we select a standard CBU Conda environment from the?
You can.
Masters don't want to.
That's Python 3.6.
So you can you can enter interpreter path directly, so you can go to like, imaging, etc., and then you should find yours could be like, I think home, for me it's MA09 and then .conda, and then you can find whichever.
Well, I need to know that at the terminal we can activate a conda environment that Dace has set up.
Yeah,
And so that would, I don't know where is the.
If you don't know the path, you can always, like, you can do a conda activate, like that's,
So now I'm in the terminal. As you can see, I'm the login node as well, and then you can say conda and list.
yeah,
And then these are the environments available for me at this point. And then you can see the path, and then you can type it up there, and then it will add it to it.
Okay.
The important thing is that the terminal window down here is kind of a separate thing from your Python code. So you can have several terminals open, and then you can set it up however you want. But if you set up your terminal here to a certain conda environment, that will not set up your Python, your Python extension to use that Python what's conda environment. So you need to set it up in the Python settings. So Python select interpreter, and you basically have the default setup for your project, and you did it once at the beginning, and that's it. And then this is a mystery for me. If you set that Python up, then usually when you open a new terminal, it will automatically conda activate your environment, except it doesn't in this case, and in some of Dace's environments it does. Yeah. But the good news is that if you do debugging, it will automatically activate the conda environment you set in the Python. You're gonna see that.
So if you want to run your Python script from the terminal, you need to do
I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so this is how you set the interpreter conda environment. So Python script. This is a Python script, so it can be run if you just run Python. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So this is my Python script. As you can see, I am already automatically in the demo folder. That's automatically done. So I'm activating my conda environment. And then I can say Python. And then it will run. Okay. So this is one way of running a piece of code. If you want to just like go there and run it from the terminal. I'm gonna kill it. The other thing you can do, you can run it interactively. So if you have your packages extension set up, then you can just select the line, right click, and say run an interactive window, and you can run the whole file, you can run bits, and you can just a single line. And then there you go, it did the import. It's not very interesting anyway, but like the import is here, so you can basically, this has in run, and then this is now available to you here. So you can also go line by line or like block by block, and then build up your little environment over here, and then you can do interactive. That's a showed in this screenshot that you can also do some plots, and the plots will be, yeah.
I will show a bit later about the interactive window.
I'm not using the interactive window, to be honest, that much.
I'm using interactive window most of the time, so that's why we.
So code editing is just the normal stuff. Syntax highlighting is very nice. If you click on a variable, it will highlight all the instances there. You have this side panel sometimes if you set it up like which you can see where the code things are highlighted, this little gray dots, etc. I'm using a Copilot which is like an AI tool. So it will give me elaborate suggestions based on the context. You can do that as well, but you can just stick to normal, more standard code editing tools. And I think the most important thing, which is really, really a deal breaker sometimes if this doesn't work properly, is debugging. So this is my script. It has some functions defined on the top. I have a main function which processes the subject, and at the bottom, as its convention, I set up the running, if you call it as a script, so it will prompt for certain inputs, and it will run the script. So it's already got a couple of like functions defined. So how do you debug this if there's something wrong? So that's actually pretty easy. And coming from the Matlab background, I found Visual Studio Code debugging the closest possible to the experience I got to use in Matlab. So what you do is there's this little run and debug side window. If you haven't run it before, debugging mode, then it will ask you to create a launch.json file, which is a template for the interpreter to run your code into. So if you just click on it and then select the default Python debugger and Python file, then it will automatically create a launch.json file for you within a hidden folder in your work folder. So it's .vs code folder, is launch.json, and this is how it looks. And this is for debugging your current Python file without any inputs. So if I go to my current Python file, I go to my debugging window, you can see I got this arrow here. And then let's say I wanted to check if some variables are okay or not. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint over there. And
there's a question, which Python extension allows this? I have the regular one installed, but I can't do this. I think it, I don't know whether how long ago the question was it about the interactive window maybe?
this is
I'm
the
not
Python extension.
But
the
yeah, so there's a Python extension,
this.
which basically allows everything. For interactive window, you need Python extension and Jupyter.
Yeah. So this is the standard Python extension, and it will also install the Python debugger automatically. Just only need to install this one, and it will pull all the dependencies. Okay, so going back to the debugging. So I put a breakpoint here, and I start the debugger. And what you can see here is there's going to be a bunch of stuff. So basically, VS Code will start my code within the proper conda environment immediately, runs through the code up until my breakpoint, and it stops there. And you can see on the left-hand side, you got a bunch of variables. So you can actually check your variables here. I've got some, flags, and then sort of paths and stuff, lists, all sorts of, you can check these. You can actually watch these. So you can add, if you want to kind of check how a variable changes in a loop, then you can just type in that variable, and then every time you run the loop, it will show you separately how it changed. And then you got the same familiar tools for advancing the code. So you can either hit continue and then it will run through, or you can go step by step. This is like the standard one, the same in Matlab. So F5 is to continue, F10 is to step to the next step, F11 is to step into, if there's a function executing, then you can step into the function and then go through this line by line. And then basically you can stop debugging. So if I'm just gonna, go a couple lines, then you can see how things, go one by one. I just exported the events there. Now I have an events array, which is quite long, three column matrix with the events information there, etc. So that's basically how you debug. Yeah.
So the question was, at this point, can you plot things or what? Or run any
Yes.
other commands?
Yes, you can. So basically you open up your console and you can see that there's this debug console over there. And here you can execute any code. I'm not sure about plotting, never tried it.
Well, plotting, I will show you how you can do plotting with debugging. It will require interactive window because here we are logged into login node. We can't have any pop-up windows at this stage. If we were not in the login node, if we were in the X2Go environment, the plotting would work. If I will demonstrate that as well. But because we are logged into login node, the pop-up windows do not work, but plotting works through interactive window. And I will show you can do debugging and stuff like that.
But that sort of experience you used to in Matlab, that you run the whole thing in debug mode, it's kind of not working with Python that way natively, because as you can see, there are a couple of extra steps for Python to run that way. So I would not recommend you to develop code in debugging mode. I would recommend you to use either the interactive window to develop code once you have a lots of checks and want to, or what I use, I'm just using Jupyter notebooks. And then there's an easy way to convert your Jupyter notebook into a Python script and then develop further. So that's what I can also show you just in a second. Okay, so that's basically debugging. I think that's very, very smooth. You can, set a lot of things here, if you can set up, to catch exceptions raised. You can set it up either just your exceptions or the others called by the system. So yeah, that's debugging. Are there any questions regarding that? Okay. And I just wanted to show you how Jupyter notebooks work. So basically, as you can see, Jupyter notebooks are supported natively here. So you can just edit and run the Jupyter notebooks as you would do it from the web interface. So this is an example tutorial from the MNE Python's page. So I can just hit run all. And as you can see, you get the plots in there within the cells. This is MEG data tutorial, so lots of ERPs and topographies, stuff like that. So basically my workflow is that whenever I start coding up something or an analysis or anything, I'm starting a new kind of like Scratchpad notebook. I built it block by block through these cells, because then you can immediately execute them and see what the output is. That's the easiest way to do. And then at the end, you can just come up here, export, and then you can export it to either a Python script, an HTML document, or a PDF. I use both HTML so all my sort of like fancy analysis outputs are made in Jupyter notebooks. In that case, I export an HTML version to keep it for records. At this point, that was my analysis result, and then I can develop further the notebook file, but I will have a kind of like a recorded version of that to go back to later if I have to. And the Python script, if it's just a Scratchpad notebook, then I can immediately convert into a Python script, and I can, let's say I prototype it on a single subject and I export it to a Python script, and then I just code it up so that it runs through all subjects, and I can submit it to the server via Slurm. I wanted to show you that in Jupyter, you also have this variable view. So once again, it's in this window where also the terminal lives. You have the Jupyter tab, and then you can see the variables. You can also open the variables in a more thorough view separately. It's not quite the same as you see before with the debugging window, but it also works equally as well. You can also debug the individual cells. So if you, instead of run an individual cell, you can just the drop button and you can debug the cell, and you can, if the cell is more elaborate than this, let's say, find something more involved, maybe here, you can set a breakpoint and then run it from there. You can debug it, and then you can inspect the variables, etc. all here in the Jupyter window. Figures, as you can see, they are integrated. As Dace mentioned already, there are the limitations. If you access if you run your code from your own PC through the SSH login, you won't have the pop-up windows. So if you do a lot of MNE Python like interactive windows, which have sliders and stuff, that won't work inside Visual Studio Code, but there's other ways to get that running over from the login, from your computer to login node. I'm not going to go into that, but the kind of pop-up windows, 3D visualizations where you could, drag a head shape or whatever, all those stuff won't work through this at least. This is my experience, but that's said that you can do it through.
So you can, if you instead of using a notebook inside VS Code, if you start a notebook from VS Code terminal, as like if you write a Jupyter notebook and then it opens a web interface. And also you are still in your Windows computer, you just have now the web interface, which is also connected to your login node. And there's at least MNE Python pop-up windows. Yeah. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure they work there.
So basically you can just open a new terminal, you can and then you can say Jupyter. And then I should be able to connect to that host. And it just opened it up. And now this is the standard Jupyter Notebook interface. But in this case, the Jupyter Notebook is running in your local browser, but the code would run on the login node. And in this case, since this is the Jupyter Notebook web interface, pop-up windows could work.
Pretty sure they work for the thing. I didn't test for this workshop because
so there are ways. The other ways is just the old-fashioned way you open up X2Go, or the other thing has called the VNC, and then start the Jupyter instance directly there with the visual VNC or X2Go interface. But that's going to be slower, but it works fine. And whenever I need to do some visual inspection of 3D data or whatever, then I would do that.
Yeah, but I suggest trying this way. I'm pretty sure it works.
Yeah. Okay, so that's about Jupyter Notebooks. And then just to show you very briefly that, if you have a documentation, a Markdown file, and it's quite overwhelming to look at a Markdown file in this way, but if you're used to it, then you can. But then if you install the Markdown all-in-one extension, then it will give you can right-click on it and open preview. And you can put them side by side, and then it nicely scrolling together. So if you scroll one and update one, the other will update immediately. So that's pretty handy for immediately seeing like documentations and stuff. So that's what I use. Another thing is, as you can see, JSON files you can use as inputs in lots of things. You can immediately edit them here, so they understand JSON. Down here you can see that it recognizes that this is JSON file, so you can syntax highlighting and everything works fine there. I forgot to mention that if you want to run your Python script with inputs by default in debugger, then you can do so by adding another term here called args. And you put your arguments here in a, so sorry, this is, let's say, in my case, I have this, of course, forgot the time, comma. So here I have process structural. For this particular thing, I can add process structural, and this will prompt it to process the structural data. So all the arguments can go here. So either just the argument or the argument and the value. So in this particular case, it would be just this. But then if you have some other setup, then you could say, you know, some arg and some value, right? So, and then when you run it as in the debugger, then it will immediately add these inputs to the code, and that's sometimes important because you may need input in right away. And you can set up as many configurations as you want. So this is a list here, so you can just, you know, copy this, put a comma, put there, and then there's a lot of documentation on this where it tells you what you can set here. And each time you add the separate current, let's say that, call it current file with input, and let's just get rid of this. So now I have two configurations, and you can see these two configurations popping up here. So whenever you run a particular file, I want to run this without input or with input, I can choose. But you cannot equally set up a configuration specifically for a specific Python file. This is going to work with any file which is open right there, but you can set it up specifically for a certain file. So yeah, all these things are possible. So I think that's it for me. I think we are time.
Well,
do you have any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Máté? I will, so we are, an hour is over. So if you need to leave, please leave. I will just continue recording. I think I will record everything that I had planned here. Some additional extras, like I think we have shown the basic things, but I will now show more about the interactive window, about multiple projects and some extras. So whenever you need, you can leave, but I will just finish my stuff and record, and you can later watch the video, or you can stay here if you have time. So yeah, so I will just carry on. So thank you, Máté. How do I close your stuff? So about the interactive window, so about plotting. So I will, for example, I have this script here, which, so unlike Máté, I actually use interactive window mostly. So basically, when I develop my code, I don't use Jupyter notebooks. I use Jupyter notebooks more for like workshops and maybe for reporting results. But when I write Python script, I don't really use Jupyter notebooks. I write just a script in a Py file, Python file, and then I sort of debug it for myself or check it myself with interactive windows. So I select lines, or you can also, if you right click, and there are also keyboard shortcuts for everything you want to do, and you can set up your own keyboard shortcuts for your commands. So you can run it all current file, or from line, or section, or run to the line. So let's say I will first run all the script in interactive window, and let's see what happens. So first I need to make sure that I'm connected to the right environment, Python environment. Here it is. So now it's connecting. So this is now out. So I'm just here plotting some results and some anomalous results. So this is all my code, and so I can see my variables here, as Máté showed. If I want more like Spider or RStudio experience, I can put that variable window to the left. And I can see also, like, click and see my variables. And I can also continue running things here, like if I want to print my subjects again. So, so it also shows me what I here have. So basically, interactive window, if you think it's like it requires a Jupyter extension and a Jupyter kernel in your environment. So it's basically like a single cell in a notebook. You could see it like a single cell in a notebook. Yeah, and so you can add some other, like type other commands or whatever, or I can also, and I can, if I don't like it, I can delete this output, but I'm still connected to my Python. I can run it line by line, as Máté already showed, or I can also debug. So how do I do debugging? Is I need to put a little thing, a hash, and $%, and this is basically inside Python script, so it's not a Jupyter notebook, and I can still run it for terminal as a Python standalone Python script. But basically here in VS Code, I can also create sort of cells. If I want, I can create another cell here, and then I can run this cell or debug this cell. So, but if I want to do debugging, I just put this cell sign at the top of my script, and then I press basically my breakpoints, let's say here. And so another thing that it's good to hear a show, I will actually put this at the bottom because I prefer it to be at the bottom, because I also want to see my activity. I know. So here I have opened this Python file. I can click on outline here. I can also see like all the things that I have there, like all my variables and stuff. I can click that folders, and then I click here, and I can see all the stuff that I have here. So now I want to put a breakpoint at one of my figures, so I can easily jump to the figure. And I will actually put it here where I plotted before I save it. So let's say I want to inspect my figure before I save it. And I will also put another one at the second figure. And now I can so go back here at the top and say debug cell. And now it will be like Máté showed. So basically my variables are here and the debugging things are here. So I will just say continue and then step in. So it will print my subjects. And here I actually can do what Danny wanted to do, like type other commands. I don't know what you would like to do here, but I can type some other commands at this point. And let's say I will continue. And so here will be my plot. So now I plot my first plot. Okay, it looks good. So I will continue and save it and plot my other plot. So yeah, and here now in the variables, so while I'm still in the debugging mode, so I can view value in data viewer as well. And then it opens my data frame here. And so I will just finish debugging. So once I have finished debugging, all my variables are gone. It's the same as in Matlab and other things. So that's a cool thing, I think. Like I really mostly work with this interactive window thing. And yeah. So that was one thing I want to do. Another thing I want to say is, yeah, I already showed you breadcrumbs, so that's very useful. I will actually open a bit more complicated files than this plotting file. So I have a more complicated ephemeral processing Python file. And here, so basically, the thing that I see in these breadcrumbs, I can also see in the outline here. And I can also sort it by, so I have sorted it by type, so all my functions. So I have a lot of several functions here, and I can click and go to that function. And so some other coding assistance tips. I don't know, maybe it's similar in other IDEs as well. I actually lately have only used VS Code. So let's say I look somewhere, and now I want to know, so how did I define this, the work path, let's say work path. I don't remember how did I define it. I can either right click and say peak definition. And now I see it. So basically, maybe I want to change it. I want to change it to something else. I can change it in this peak mode. There are also shortcuts for that. And let's say I also want to see all the references where I use this work path. I can go say find all references. So it shows me the code, and I can see where I have used that variable. So these are some things. And for all these, there are also keyboard shortcuts. For example, for peak definition, it was Alt F2 and others. Another thing is that you can easily change. Let's say I don't want this to be called work path anymore. I want to be called something else. I can either right click and do it, or I can just click F2, and I will rename this to something else, work dir, and it will change all that. So that's quite handy. You could do it as search replace, but it's not as reliable. So that's, you can rename the definitions. Another thing, so yeah, so you can also split this editor window in like side-by-side editing. So if you want to close that. If you want to maybe look at some other script, or you can also do, what I find useful is the side-by-side within the same script. So this is my complex preprocessing script. Let's say I am somewhere down here, and I want to also keep seeing what actually happened here at the top. So I can do this side-by-side editing. So edit something at the bottom, edit something at the top. Another thing, I know that there are a couple of, at least a couple of Vim lovers in the audience. So Vim, I haven't used Vim myself, but I see that I'm lacking a lot, because Vim is something, Marta could probably tell more, that you can basically edit your code and do scripting and typing without removing your hands from the keyboard, not using mouse ever again. So that can make things much faster. And in VS Code, there's an extension called Vim that basically you install it, and then your editor becomes like a Vim emulator. So that can be handy, very handy, apparently, to use Vim commands. So another thing, useful thing here, if I click, so this is my file browser, this is my outline. I can also look at the timeline, and I can see the changes that has happened in this file. So these are my source, my version control things, the edits that I have done in this file. I can click and see what changes I have done since the last time. So that's a timeline thing. Yeah. So if I'm using Git here, and here, so this is a source control. So this is a source control activity. If I click here, I see that I have uncommitted changes. And yeah, so basically I can also click here and see what changes these were. And I can discard the change, or I can commit the change, or I can also do all these in a terminal, in the command line, if you prefer that. So one thing I wanted to also say, which I find very helpful for me, is that if I work on multiple projects, let's say multiple fMRI projects, and in VS Code there's something called Workspaces. So basically I can add multiple projects to this one workspace. So here I have added several fMRI projects, and I can save this as a workspace, which I have done already. Or I can open another workspace, like open workspace from a file, and I have several workspaces here, like bid stuff. There are several projects that I have done on bids conversion, workshops. That's another workspace, and in each workspace, like the workshops, for example, I have different workshops that I have done, and yeah, so I find that very helpful, that I can save these as a workspaces, and then depending on what I'm working, I can open and see everything together. And also regarding the workspaces, so if I click on this Python activity, it shows in which projects or folders which interpreters or which Conda environments I'm using. Well, usually in my case, I use within the same workspace, I use the same Conda environment, because like, well, actually, no, here I'm actually using Kamkan, and here I'm using fMRI, here I'm using fMRI with capital letters. So I can see that, and I can also here, so see a version of Python, I can see what packages I have in these Conda environments, and I can even like delete packages, or I can update all packages or do some other things with this interface. Of course, I can do all these things also with a command line, but it might be useful sometimes to easily see what stuff I have there. So that was about multiple projects, multiple workspaces, and there are also workspace specific settings. If I go on settings, open workspace settings. So here, basically, I only have like folders which are on the workspace. I can also, if I want, I can either, if I want to change the order, let's say I want to put bits conversion at the top, I can drag and drop, but I can also just change it here and put it at the top. And it will, yeah, sometimes it reloads, and then I need to so now it is at the top. And maybe you notice that I was entering my password in a different way than Máté. I didn't enter it in a terminal like Máté had. I had this sort of a pop-up window password, because I haven't used the university logging to university system, so I didn't need to set up two-factor authentication. So by default, your password entering will just pop up there. So that's that. Yeah, I also wanted to show you that, to prove you that you can run R in VS Code as well easily. Well, you need to install R package. There is R extension called R, just R. So let's say here I did some simple SEM, and here I need to be sure that so I need to log, so here you see that R not attached. I make sure that I have R attached, R versions that I want to have attached. So I will try and open R terminal, see whether it attaches. Yeah, so now it is attached. So basically I'm using R inside Conda environment. So I created a Conda environment with R installed in the Conda environment, and then set it up in VS Code. And you can also install packages and everything in that Conda environment. So that's what I have done. And then you set it up in this R extension. And then when you open the R terminal, it should attach to your R version that you want to use, and make sure that it is here. And now when I just run it here, so it will do my plot. So this is just a simple SEM model that was in my PhD. I haven't used actually R for a long time, but this was my PhD work. And now when I click on this R activity bar, I can see my variables. Sorry. Yeah, maybe I don't have much here, so this is just plot. Let's run another script. Let's say this one here, and let's run it. So yeah, the output. So I had some output in that script. It goes here. Again, I can put it on the right side or left side, and this is a new script, new plot, and I can also see my previous plot here. And basically, yeah, so the workspace is here. That's something. So usually, at least I should be able to see all my variables here and know what's happening now. Usually, when I demonstrate something doesn't work as always. But there should be all my variables, and I like similar as it was in the interactive window with Jupyter. I can see and explore my variables as well. So basically, yeah. So that's running R scripts as well inside. So yeah, I would prefer that instead of switching to RStudio. I would just use my R scripts here. And you can also create a Jupyter notebook in our Jupyter notebook and just connect to the right kernel. So I also, like in my fMRI projects, I have a lot of Matlab scripts that I occasionally, well, I still use, not occasionally, but I use them like in pre-processing and stuff. So if I need to do some light Matlab script editing, I also do it in VS Code. Well, I can't do Matlab script debugging in VS Code. Well, in theory, you can. There are extensions for Matlab debugging and running Matlab in an interactive window and stuff, but the setup is, you need to set up Matlab paths and stuff. I haven't done it. And just if I need to debug and run Matlab properly, I would still open Matlab. But if I need to do some light changes, which I'm quite sure it would work, I would do it in VS Code as well. Yeah, and then just run my Matlab scripts from a terminal. So another great thing which I have already mentioned, is that there is a Git integration. And for example, here, if I don't know whether you can see, there are several also Git extensions. I have installed Git extension called Git Lens. So by the way, in extension, if you type @ you can also sort of select some like built-in popular and extensions, and you can also select my installed, and then within my installed extensions, I will search what Git extensions I have. So I have Git Lens, this extension. And one cool thing what it allows me to see is, I will actually open a more interesting project for that, which was my collaboration with Máté on bits conversion. And by the way, on the way, so I just want, because I love terminal so much, I have noticed that Máté usually has his terminal closed. He doesn't have a terminal. I just love my terminal to be always open. So when I work in some project, I just always do this open integrated terminal, and it's always there. I somehow feel safer there when I have that. Yeah, so bits conversion. Let's say I will actually open Máté's documentation. So this is a Máté's README file, and so I can preview it like Máté showed. And so I can, there is this faded thing. I don't know whether you can see, but there's like this faded thing Máté earlier 3 weeks ago. Or if I hover over it, then I can see that Máté edited this line 3 weeks ago, and then I can click on it and see what exactly the editing was. So I will maybe actually click on, because I here already made an so I did it. So I edited this line 12 hours ago. So I will, and this is uncommitted change. So that's here. But let's say I will see, what did I do here? Yeah, also nothing interesting. But yeah, so I can do things like that. So I have this Git Lens. I can also click here and see my previous changes. Or I can click here on file annotation. So this faded thing is a file annotation. And this is called blame. So basically, if I sort of, it shows whom it is to blame, who edited and created or whatever. So it's called blame, Git blame. You can also switch it off if you don't like it, but I sort of like it. I can also do it here, Git blame, and then it shows me on the side for all lines. That's cool. It also shows heat map. So basically the most recent changes. Let's see Máté's heat map. So the most recent changes would be darker, and the older changes would be brighter. So these are some cool, and as I already showed in my screenshots, this is Git graph, so we can see on what we have done in this project bits conversion, what changes we have made, what commits we have made, and who made it, Máté or I can also click here and see basically what was happening in these changes. So there are a lot of cool things about Git integration. So that's something I wanted to mention. And finally, maybe I will show, so what if we need these pop-up windows? So as I said, I think many Python pop-up windows in notebooks would work if you open them in the web interface just from here. But what if you need pop-up windows for some reason? So we, on our login nodes, actually we have a module for VS Code. So just to remind you, this module available, we can see all modules that we have available, and there's also VS Code available. And Anthony, upon my request, installed the latest, but well, anyway, so currently the default is actually quite old version. But that's a problem using VS Code and login nodes. You don't have full control over it. You always need to ask IT, and it's actually IT's recommendation is for us to install it on our Windows and then connect it to login nodes, but through SSH. But what if you need? What can you do? So let's say I will load. Actually, I think I already had so module load. Well, I will just load the default one, and then I write code, and it will open. So this is, I already checked it. So this will be my script with the two plots that I showed before. And in this case, I will not run it in the interactive window. I will actually debug it in a normal way. Not in the interactive window, but I will debug it. I just can't, if I can't see the terminal, I somehow, I don't feel comfortable if I don't see it. I will just, debug it like I did before in the interactive window. Here I will go to my figure quickly. So debug Python file. So here it will show me. I think it's connecting. Okay, so here it printed my subjects. Okay, very good. So I will continue to my plot. So let's see my plot. And it must be here. Yeah, here is my plot. Okay, looks very good. I will save it. So yeah, basically that's all. Or I can, without debugging, just run it whole. Just click here, run Python from file, and it will pop up my plots in a normal way. And maybe it looks cool, and maybe you might think, okay, I will actually use VS Code in the login node. It looks so much better. I would still recommend you against that and use it on your Windows and connect it through SSH. So I think these were the main things, probably, that there are many more things, many other things, like a lot of keyboard shortcuts that you can change yourself. Basically anything that irritates you, you can be sure that you can change it so that you love it, that it doesn't irritate. Máté said you were also irritated by this, that the files were not opening immediately and closing, that, well, everything can be changed in settings, a lot of settings you can customize, and basically set it up for your workflows, for your projects, for your project groups. And probably we forgot to tell something, but we already much over time. So if you do you have any questions, and I hope that we convinced you, whatever, it's still your choice, whatever makes you productive, but I have been very productive with VS Code, really like it. So thanks. So I need to check, are there any questions on Zoom? I don't know where is Zoom. Where do we have Zoom? How do I get Zoom back? So something saying that a month where will the okay, yeah, I will email about the recording. Yeah, so that's
The quick start guide.
stop coding.
We have to come up with some quick start guide.
Well, quick starts really depends on your personal workflow. I don't know what you do, so it's well, standard installation we showed. So the standard installation is so actually, yeah, I didn't finish my presentation. So standard installation is this one. Go and install it, and then connect through SSH, and then set up whatever you need for your what you are doing. So if you are using Python, you need to install the Python extension. If you are using Jupyter, install Jupyter extension. If you are Vim lover, install Vim extension. So basically, these are keyboard shortcuts for Windows. The default keyboard shortcuts for Windows. You can customize everything. And there are resources. I recommend you to go through official documentation. There will be a lot of things and tips how to set up, get started, and such things. I also recommend actually to check their Twitter. Well, if you are, once you start, because on their Twitter there are updates, their latest features and like the latest updates, and they describe their latest features. So that's helpful. And here Máté also gave some links to like how to do remote development using SSH. So there are some links to get you started, basically. Yeah. Yeah, and also there are a lot of online tutorials, like for example, this 6-hour long one. It's 6 hours. You don't need to watch all 6 hours because actually the middle part is a lot about HTML, but it's divided in chapters, so you can click through the chapters. I found many things useful and learned some things myself, some useful tips and things. So for Olaf to get started, install it and then get started. So